Hello! In this video I'm going to teach you how I'm choosing which tasks go into which standard operating procedure, especially when there's crossover between the tasks. If you don't know who I am, my name is Alex Northrule and I'm currently going from freelance digital marketing to agency owner. And part of the task that I need to do in order to make this transition is standardize every procedure in my business from the very ground up all the way to hiring, firing. I will need to have a procedure in place. What I'm starting with is the value adding activities like building the websites, like running the Google ads, like running the SEO campaigns. And there's quite a lot of crossover between these. When I was sitting down to make the first few, so I've started with building WordPress websites. Those are the procedures I am going to be writing first. What I found is that there's a lot of crossover between not just what I do for the WordPress websites, sometimes we build it on Wix as well. That crossover, do I want to be making 2 or 3 standard operating procedures which are effectively the same? And the answer to that is no. And so instead of having a 10-step operating procedure, potentially that needs to be a 2-step operating procedure. I'm going to try and give you some examples here. So SiteGround hosting is something that you'd need if you were running a WordPress website, but you don't need hosting if you're doing a Wix website. And so if the procedure starts at buying the domain and then goes all the way through to giving access to the client, you can't use that procedure for multiple tasks. I couldn't use that same procedure for WordPress websites and Wix websites. And so the way that I've thought of breaking this down is, what is the smallest chunk that is this most effective task? And so the procedures can just be taken from one job into another, because that one particular task only deals with that one particular piece of adding value. So this procedure that I made yesterday was, how do you create a temporary website on SiteGround and then add yourself as an admin? I didn't then add to that procedure, how do you add users to the WordPress site? That is purely create the temporary site and add yourself as an admin. What this means is the next procedure, which is how do you add users to the WordPress site? I can take that and have that not just in the flow for building a WordPress website, but I can have that particular SOP and I can just duplicate it and have it as a procedure in the next one, which is how do you migrate a website or how do you update a WordPress website? This means that by having only the minimum required steps in each SOP, they're much more flexible, and we don't have to create 2 or 3 of them to do exactly the same process. I can just duplicate them one to the next. Another way that I'm breaking this down is just into logical steps and transitions. So SiteGround and setting up the hosting of the SiteGround website, that has its own block of SOPs. And then as soon as we move into the domain area on GoDaddy and start fiddling around with DNS has its own block of SOPs, and these are all tagged, or they will be tagged with DNS, domains, so that at any point we bring a new service on, in the database I can do a search for DNS or domain, and all of the SOPs, which are very small, so each SOP is only 3 or 4 steps because it covers a single task. Look in the database, find all the DNS ones. Okay, right, these 4 SOPs fit perfectly into this new service. I don't need to make those again. This also means then that if it comes to updating, let's say this particular process changes in SiteGround, I don't have to go through and update 4 separate standard operating procedures. I only make the update to one, and it changes the process for every other value adding service that we're doing. So how does this relate to you and you building your own SOPs, which I think is valuable? You don't want to have 100-step standard operating procedures if you're offering more than one similar service. Otherwise, you'll have an SOP for this one service, an SOP for that service, and it will be a lot harder to maintain them. Whereas if you have a database and you have a bunch of different SOPs, it's going to be much easier for you to update them. For example, think about this. Each of my SOPs has a written checklist, a written step-by-step list, and a Loom video which walks the employee through the exact steps. If I'd filmed that Loom video and it was 15-20 minutes long, and I need to change that process, I've got to re-record that entire process, or I've got to go into an editor, find the bit I need to cut out, cut that bit out, film another bit, stitch them back together, and then re-upload it. Whereas if it's broken down into very, very small chunks, I can just very quickly re-record that one video and it slots back in. Link change, done. I think splitting them down will also help with tracking where the bugs in the system are. So when a new job comes in, the employee will check the links. So they'll check the Loom video and they'll check the step-by-step. But eventually what will happen is they will just get given a checklist. These are your tasks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then once they've done task 1 with the links to the SOP, check that, move on to the next one. If there's a problem, it'll be very easy to see, okay, the problem was at step 5, why? SiteGround's changed their interface, okay, update the procedure. If it's a 30 or 40 step checklist in one document, it's going to be a lot harder to find out exactly where the problem is. So yeah, there you go. That's how I'm thinking about which tasks to put in which SOP. I hope this is helpful. If you want to follow along with this journey from freelancer to agency owner, subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment if you're working on SOPs, or if you've already done this journey, or you've got any tips. I would love to talk about them with you. And yeah, thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye bye.